Okay, we're ready. Wake up, Ben. Quit playing the piano. All right, your Ben Joravsky show for Wednesday, April 10th is moments away. But before we get going into the show, we would like to thank the following unions for helping bring the Ben Joravsky show back. First up, it's the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers. I think my dad's in that union. Local 126 and District 8. What's going on, Ryan Kelly? The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Thanks to those unions for helping jump on board with us here and bringing the Ben Joravsky show back. And, of course, today's show is brought to you by our friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. The Ben Joravsky show starts now. Yes, indeed, it is Wednesday, April 10th, and live from the Chicago Reader's Sun-Times studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky show. Today on the program, we're talking Lincoln Yards. Legendary Chicago journalist Monroe Anderson returns. We welcome our favorite grassroots organizer, Amisha Patel, and James Muhammad of SEIU Healthcare, Illinois, Indiana. And now your host. What's on your mind today? Chicago Reader columnist, Ben Joravsky.
Hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this It Was Fun While It Lasted Wednesday. And here's why. So let me take you back in time. It was Monday morning. I was drinking a cup of coffee, looking out the window and thinking great thoughts about a column I had to write when, bing, I got a text.
Microwave? Oh.
No, man, it's my text. It goes, bing. Oh, what could that be? I took a look. It was my text. Breaking news. Lori Lightfoot, according to a friend who was texting me, had asked for a delay in the vote on Lincoln Yards and 78 TIFs. Yes, Lori Lightfoot was taking a stand. She said she had concerns, all right? Had to have a delay in the vote. And Rahm Emanuel said, yeah, if Lori wants a delay, I'll give her a delay. And I was like, hooray! And I was jumping up and down doing Kool and the Gang songs. Celebrate good time. Come on.
No singing.
And then I started singing Freddie Mercury. We are the my friend. You don't like Queen?
I just don't like you singing.
Oh, sorry. And I love Queen. Anyway, I was thinking, oh my God. Has Chicago finally come to its senses? Has Chicago finally elected a mayor with enough common sense to say no to spending, get this, folks, $2.3 billion, that's billion with a B, $2.3 billion of property taxes on things nobody wants, like upscale developments and gentrifying wards? And instead, is she proposing to spend it on things that we all want and need, like policemen, and firefighters, and teachers, and pensions for our retirees? And how about infrastructure programs to fix up our crumbling bridges and roads? Is that what the Lori Lightfoot election is all about? If so, hooray! Chicago works. And then, ding! That was another text coming in, D. Uh-oh.
I thought your burrito was done.
Another text. This one coming in from another friend going, uh-oh, bad news. Alderman Pat O'Connor, who chairs the Finance Committee. He chairs the Finance Committee because the previous chairman of the Finance Committee, Alderman Ed Burke, is indicted, had to step down because he was indicted by the feds. Oh, boy, what a city we have here in Chicago. Anyway, Alderman Patrick O'Connor, who is a big supporter of TIFs. He loves TIFs so much, he put a big TIF tattoo on his shirt, on his chest. He breaks open his shirt. I love TIFs.
Yeah, that TIF tat.
Pat O'Connor with his TIF tattoo.
Oh, wait, TIF tat Pat?
Yeah, TIF tat Pat. Look, everybody, I got a TIF tattoo. Let's waste money on TIFs. Anyway, Pat O'Connor announced that, no, Ben, it's not over yet. Oh, no. It'd take more than one Lori Lightfoot press release to kill these monsters. Oh, yes, it was going to take a lot more. And instead, Pat O'Connor announced that they were merely recessing the Finance Committee. What a slick move. Recessing the Finance Committee until they could convene on Wednesday. In the meantime, they would have a discussion. Like, ooh, let's take a look at the TIF, in 48 hours and see if it was a good idea to spend, $2.3 billion, that's billion with a B, on things we don't want, upscale development in gentrifying neighborhood, instead of spending it on things we do want. Police, firefighters, teachers, crumbling roads, let's fix them up. Anyway, I stopped singing happy songs and started singing sad ones because, folks, I knew what was coming. Oh, yeah. They're going to take Lori Lightfoot into the back rooms of City Hall and to say, look, listen here, Lori. This is how things work in the city of Chicago. It's one thing to tell people like Ben Joravsky, oh, I'm against TIFs. It's another thing. When you come to the 5th floor of City Hall, you got to play ball. All right? And guess what, D?
You see that tattoo on that guy's chest? We're playing ball here.
It's the same alderman who stood up to Harold Washington, the same alderman who defied Harold Washington. They're still around. They're like now TIF monsters. Ed Burke, Pat O'Connor. Anyway, oh God, we spent 2 agonizing days wondering who would prevail. Pat O'Connor and Rahm Emanuel with their TIF tattoos, or the good side of Lori Lightfoot. Last night, she gave us her answer, D. It came in the form of bing, an email. It was an email to me, D. I'm laughing now, but I was crying last night. Essentially, the email said, I've decided to look the other way while they pass this TIF. It was going to happen anyway. All right, I got a lot of other things to do, and I need to fight with Pat O'Connor and Rahm Emanuel and Sterling Bay and whoever owns 78. And so let's just move on. By the way, this Bing email came while I was doing my yoga, D. I was doing downward facing dog.
Nice.
I was trying to, oh man, I got to do some more yoga to get this out of me. By the way, I do yoga every night. Did you know that, D?
It's funny to me, but that's awesome. I knew that.
Yeah, I know.
It cracks me up.
I know everybody. You do yoga? Yeah, man. In privacy of my house, I don't want anybody seeing it. Anyway. Oh, God. It was a rough night for me. I was tossing and turning. I couldn't sleep. I go, man, oh, man. That was fast. That was a fast fight. 48 hours and it's already over. In the aftermath, there's 2 theories as to why Lori Lightfoot dropped her opposition or dropped her concerns to the TIF. One theory is that Rahm and the powers that be intimidated her, scared her, told her that it would be rough, very rough for any mayor who dared to get in the way of so much power, money, etc. And the other theory, by some real skeptics out there, D, some real cynics out there. I'm not saying I believe this theory. I'm just saying people have been advancing this theory, okay? Is that she never really intended to oppose it in the first place. And it was me. It was merely a ruse to fool people like me and like, wow, maybe she really is, a progressive. Anyway, as I walked in the studio today, I got another message, bing, from Crane Chicago Business. They are so happy. I got to tell you, I think everybody at Crane's, before you get a job at Crane's, has to put a little TIF tattoo on their chest. Ding. Anyway, they announced that the TIF had passed. I think the vote was 32-13 for the Lincoln Yards and 31-14 for the 78, which is Roosevelt. So $2.3 billion right out the window, folks. Hey, if you like property taxes, you're going to get a lot of them in the next few years because they took those properties, those gentrifying areas of the city, off the tax rolls. Guess what? They're going to have to raise the rates on the rest of you suckers out there. Ah, God, D, it was such a great moment, that feeling of jubilation. I felt like the inmates in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest when Jack Nicholson took them on that cruise. Remember that part of the movie when the boat and they were like free from the asylum and they went fishing and they felt the fresh air and they drank a beer and then they came back and right back into the asylum for you and here, put you on the meds. And man, that didn't last long. Anyway, Yeah, I guess Lori kind of raised the flag of surrender in that one. 48 hours of reform on TIFs, folks. Well, that's 48 more hours than we've ever had before. I'm going to look on the bright side.
There we go. The road to progress. Yes.
I mean, that was 48 hours more than Rahm ever gave us. So let's look on the bright side, everybody. 48 hours of reform. It was fun while it lasted. We got a great show today, everybody. I'm not going to be crying today. Oh, no, the fight continues here at the Ben Joravsky Show. Yes, indeed. Monroe Anderson will be here, and we'll be talking. We're going to take a little break from TIF Talk to talk Trump, and Trump. I may also throw an Ebony question or two at Monroe. Monroe used to work for Ebony, and I just saw in my beloved bright one.
And who we kidding? You got to bring up the Lincoln Yards, too.
Hey, come on, Monroe. I think Monroe was actually for Lincoln Yards, interesting enough. Anyway, we'll be talking about Ebony Magazine going bankrupt. Monroe used to work for them. And then after Monroe, James Muhammad, good friend from SEIU Healthcare. Got a lot to talk about with James, all kinds of issues. Probably talk a little TIF. Don't you think I'll talk TIF?
Oh, yeah.
SEIU is a big fans of Tony Preckle and go, hey, where was Tony in this TIF fight? Man, oh man, I mean, I know you're not running for mayor anymore, but it's not like you leave Chicago. Hold on, let me see.
You under there, Tiff?
Oh, yeah, come on out, Tony. Come out. Yeah, Tony was kind of missing in action on this TIF fight as soon as the election. And anyway, we'll be talking to James Muhammad. I may ask him about that Kyle Korver article. Did you see that Kyle Korver article?
Yes, I did.
It was very interesting. Kyle Korver, for all our non-sports fans. Dennis doesn't allow me to talk sports, but I'll just tell you this.
Come on.
Kyle Korver was a great player for the Bulls, now plays for the Utah Jazz, and he wrote an article on the internet about white privilege. Interesting article from Kyle Korver. He's white man, plays in the NBA, which is roughly 75% black people. So interesting article from Kyle Korver. James says he wants to talk about that. And then, of course, at the end of the show, we're bringing on Amisha Patel from Grassroots Collaborative. And guess what she's going to be talking about? TIF. Oh. And she does not have a TIF tattoo. That's for sure. I'm sure she's going to have some interesting criticism and thoughts about what went down in the city council today as the city council decided, I think it would be a good idea to take $2.3 billion in property taxes and spend it on something that has absolutely nothing to do with all the pressing obligations we have as a city of Chicago. Good moves, Chicago City Council. Way to be good fiduciary watchdogs of the public purse. I know what we're going to do. We're going to take that window over there, open it up, take $2.3 billion of property taxes, and just throw it right out. Anyway.
He is on fire, people.
What a heck of a city I live in. Chicago. Anyway, it was great 48 hours, D. It was a great 48 hours. Yeah. So that's what we're going to be talking about. But before we do any of that, we got the news with the doctor.
I love that nickname, Tif Tat Pat, by the way. That's awesome.
It just came to me in a moment of inspiration. Actually, it came to you.
Yeah, I came up with it. What are you talking? I'm taking credit for my jokes.
Yeah.
Copyright. All right. Hey, before we get going here, join us on the live stream, everybody. Be like Benjamin. Benjamin took the deep dive here. It said it's his first time trying it out. What's going on, Benjamin?
All right, Benjamin. Here we go.
Oh, hey, look at that. Ben's got a car that you can't see that he's doing there. Great podcasting material there.
That's my blue Mustang, Benjamin.
No one can say, there you go. That's his blue Mustang. Bruce, what's happening? Join us on the live stream. Send us a statement, question, make fun of us, whatever you want to do. It's a good time. All right. It's the middle of the day. And like we always do about this time, let's talk about the national news happening this afternoon. Well, Trump is looking out for his boy today. I think he's down to like 3 of them, by the way. That is including his own children. Not many friends. Burning a lot of bridges, that guy. Now, yesterday we mentioned how this Stephen Miller fella was recently given the keys in the Trump administration's immigration department, and boy, was he getting ripped all across the country yesterday for it. Well, the president says, don't believe any of it. It's all fake news. Trump said Stephen Miller is, quote, a wonderful person and a brilliant man.
Yeah, Stephen Miller. We talked about him yesterday, right, D? Stephen Miller?
Oh, yeah.
Not the rock star. Stephen Miller's the millennial who works for Trump. He's a little to the right of Trump himself. I mentioned this yesterday. I think Stephen Miller is one of these guys who's rebelling against his background. So he grew up in a liberal area, I think in Southern California, and he was the kid who, when he was in high school, would not take his garbage in the cafeteria back to, to throw it out and put the tray back because he said, That's janitors get paid to do that.
It was the topic at the janitors conference every month.
I'm like, he was just a warm and caring, fuzzy-hearted guy way back when in high school, and it's just gone downhill ever since. Make the janitors do more work.
Trump also insisted that he is in charge of his own immigration policy. All right, here's the quote from Trump.
Frankly, there's only one person that's running it. You know who that is. It's me.
He told reporters outside the White House. Anything else you want to add
Yeah,
there?
I want to add this. Donald Trump rode this horse into the White House and apparently thinks this is the horse that's going to get him reelected to a second term, just bashing immigrants coming from the South, by the way, coming across the border with Mexico, bashing immigrants to play on the fears, prejudices, and biases of people in this country, and denigrating the character of so many good immigrants to this country. This country is built by immigrants. And so shame on Donald Trump and shame on Stephen Miller. But you know what, D? It's Donald Trump and immigration is sort of like the city of Chicago and TIFs. It's just a bad deal they can't get rid of, and they're just going to play it out. So
get ready for that a lot today, all right? Anytime we don't talk about the TIFs in the Lincoln Yards, Ben's going to find a way to segue into it. He's on fire.
Because Chicago, you know what? You can't just bash Trump. Got to look in the mirror, Chicago. Some of the stuff you do, Chicago.
In other news nationally, we have two 2020 Democratic POTUS candidate updates. First up, Mr. $27 himself, Bernie Sanders. He reintroduced his Medicare for All health care plan today. Under Medicare for All, the U.S. would transition to a single-payer system run entirely by the federal government. The bill is largely the same as the one he introduced in 2017, which means that a few of his 2020 Democratic presidential rivals have backed it. Senators Cory Booker, Kristen Gillibrand, Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, all previously endorsed an earlier version of Bernie's bill.
Yes, indeed. We talked about this with David Ferris last Friday. We're going to be having more conversations as the election year kicks up. What's a good idea for, two issues. One, politically speaking, what's the best idea for the Democrats to advance in order to take back the White House? I'm going to bring Carlos Ramirez-Rosa in on this. He was a big Bernie supporter back in the last election. See what he has to say about this. Politically speaking, should they go with Medicare for All, or should they go for some sort of hybrid form of expanded health care in which people get to keep their private insurance, their work-related insurance? So there's a political issue, and then there's just the issue of what's best for the people of America. And sometimes you got to choose one or the other. So we'll be talking about this quite a while in the coming weeks.
And finally, in hopes that we will all forget about that awkward DNA test thing, 2020 presidential candidate Senator Elizabeth Warren released her 2018 tax return today.
Okay.
It showed more than $900,000 in family income. She and her husband, Bruce Mann, reported earning $905,742 in total income, including $176,280 from her Senate salary and $324,687 from her books. Altogether, they paid $230,965 in taxes and donated $50,138 to charity.
How much did she make in the books, did she? $300,000?
In the books there, $324,687.
All right.
I simply cannot relate.
Yeah. Well, you got to write a book, all right? Go write a book.
Okay.
After the show, go write a book, all right?
All right.
And listen, you know what? Hey, Donald Trump, Elizabeth Warren released her taxes. Why don't you release your taxes, huh? I just do not understand why the Republicans don't.
I'm being audited.
Oh, yeah, right. You're right. I forgot. You're the only one in the world who realizes that an audit shouldn't prevent you from having to release your taxes. But good for Elizabeth. I'm waiting for Bernie. He hasn't released his yet. He said the other day he was going to release his taxes. Did you see that bit? I think I would tell you about that. It was I think it was Trevor Noah was interviewing him, and he said to Bernie, it was pretty clever. Got to give Trevor Noah credit. He said Donald Trump doesn't release his taxes because he doesn't want people to realize really how broke he is, and Bernie Sanders doesn't release his taxes because Bernie doesn't want people to realize how rich he is. And then Bernie went, not the case. It's not a bad Bernie.
It was decent.
Yeah,
it was decent.
And then he said, don't you worry, Trevor. I'm going to release those taxes. So I'm waiting. Come on, Bernie.
Now, of course, we will keep you posted on these stories as today's program rolls along. Oh, we got an update from Bernie Sanders here. A quote from Bernie Sanders. A quick little update.
$27.
That's what the quote was.
By the way, what happened to my Bernie Sanders doll? I swear I had a Bernie Sanders.
You did not have a Bernie Sanders doll. You're delusional, my man.
It's gaslight. Ooh, they took the doll and they told me I didn't have a doll and I'm losing my mind. Ah!
All right, our senile host. Fantastic.
All right.
Great work, partner. Hey, you ready to find out what's going on in Chicago and or Illinois this afternoon?
I was born ready.
I love that answer. Always a fantastic answer, especially at this time, because coming up after these short words from our host, Ben Joravsky, we're going to find out what else is news.
I cannot wait, because it's the time of day where the doctor plucks that little trick from his little sleeve. We'll see what it is when we return. Did you know that 40% of the people in Illinois opt to be cremated? Well, it's true. And Chicagoland Cremation Options honors their wishes by providing cremation services directly to the general public. Chicagoland Cremation Options provides an affordable, ethical, and easy cremation arrangement, whether in person or online. Save thousands and streamline the process by going directly to Chicagoland Cremation Options. It's a family-owned business operated by my good friend, Douglas Klein. Here's how you reach them. ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. One more time, ChicagolandCremationOptions.com.
Hey, welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Benny J, take it away.
All right, will do. I will take it away. Before I take it away and turn it back to you for the local news, D's, I got to tell you, on my way, walking up Racine to our beautiful studio that the Chicago Sun-Times has built for us in their lovely West Loop building, I bumped into Marty Ritter, an old friend. Marty Ritter, who is
Marty.
He's an organizer for Chicago Teachers Union, and he lives in this neighborhood. And for I don't know what he was doing, but
how about that bagel place, huh, Marty? Whoa, it's right across the street, guys. It's fantastic.
It's right down the street from where Marty lives. Yeah, he lives somewhere around here, and I bumped into him. Hey, I was walking down the street. I was deep in thought, thinking about TIFs, thinking, what was I going to say about the TIF thing? And I was just deep in thought. All of a sudden, I hear, "Hey, Ben!" I look up and I couldn't. What? Marty! I walk over. I start chatting. Marty Ritter, great Marty Ritter, and he had great news for me. He says he subscribes to 3 podcasts on his show.
Okay.
All right, 1, 2, 3 podcasts on his show. One of them is Lawrence Holmes. But Marty's a big sports guy. Lawrence Holmes, great sports broadcaster for I think it's ESPN. And then he has a World Wrestling Federation podcast.
It's called Entertainment. World Wrestling Entertainment now.
What did I say?
Federation.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
It's not the 80s.
Wrestling.
They got the F out.
I haven't really been following wrestling since Bruno Sammartino was wrestling.
Awesome.
It was way before your time. And finally, the third show. Our show.
Hey, we made the cut.
Yeah, we made the cut. Marty's cut. He showed me the little picture, and he said he wants to come on to talk wrestling. All right. So I know you have a ban on sports, but I think you may let Marty come on to talk.
We can have like a good 2 to 3 minute talk on wrestling. Sure.
All right, you hear that, Marty? 2 to 3 minutes, then boom, back to politics. The guy knows politics, by the way. Marty Ritter knows his stuff.
Awesome.
So anyway, it was fun bumping into Marty Ritter, the great Marty Ritter from the Chicago Teachers Union. All right, boy, what do you got for me, young
Seriously,
man?
how about that bagel shop across the street? Am I right, Marty? Whoa, dude. All right, everybody, we're about to find out what's going on locally. It's time for What Else is News. Mm-hmm. And yes, we're going to talk more about the late-night Lincoln Yards deal. Trust me, we will be spending a good majority of today's program wrapping our heads around this unfortunate dose of reality. I have a feeling our guests Monroe Anderson, Amisha Patel, and James Muhammad are going to be talking about it, whether they like it or not as well, okay? But, Ben, let's take our mind off of that for the moment, okay? Let's try our best, please.
Right,
Give your inner zen. Do some yoga here.
All right, I'll do that downward facing.
Oh, there you go. Oh, good. Okay, good. Let's take our mind off of it, and let's attempt to answer this age-old question.
Yeah.
And I'm sure all of us have at least one person in our families that have asked this question. Shout out to my Uncle Ron. If you're listening, hey, Ron, what's up, buddy?
What's up, Ron?
How much homegrown marijuana is too much homegrown marijuana?
Yeah.
That was the question posed to our Illinois Democratic Governor, J.B. Pritzker, on Tuesday. Now our governor has made this no secret, all right? He is into the idea of legalizing recreational marijuana in the state of Illinois. Pritzker has stated on several occasions that it could bring in close to $170 million in state revenue, and he wants to get this going ASAP. And Ben, for any of our new listeners out there, we all just learned you do yoga, but what are your thoughts on recreational marijuana?
Well, first of all, good news. Monroe Anderson has arrived. Love it when my guests come early. Everybody knows, who knows anything about my writing, I've been banging the drum for the legalization of recreational marijuana forever. I think it's an outrage that it's not okay. It's hypocritical that we make it illegal since so many people smoke it, and it's just downright unfair, bigoted, prejudiced, racist the way we enforce the law, where we lock up black people for doing something that everybody does. And so I just feel that there's no justification for the continued war on drugs through marijuana. I've always believed, or at least since I put my mind on it, that it should be legalized. Now, J.B. Pritzker says it can raise up to $170 million. I don't think it's sound policy to legalize marijuana strictly because of the money it's going to raise and start anticipating great amount of money to roll in. It's going to be offset by educational programs to try to keep people from doing too much marijuana, for policing. You know, they're still going to be now they're going to be cracking down on people, see if they're driving stoned. And it probably won't bring in as much money as they anticipate. So I think there's enough compelling reasons to legalize marijuana without hyping the financial end of it. But that seems to be what Pritzker and many advocates for legalizing marijuana feel compelled to do, because I'm pretty sure the polling and the focus group research shows that's why most people favored, if they favored at all.
Yes, J.B. Pritzker wants to legalize recreational marijuana here in Illinois. And yesterday, my friends, J.B. doubled down on the doobie. The following comes from the Chicago Sun-Times, and Tina Spondeles asked during a Springfield news conference about his, quote, philosophical view of whether Illinois residents should have the right to grow cannabis in their homes. Pritzker voiced his support. Quote, this is Pritzker, "I don't think it's a philosophical question about whether it should just be an open right for anybody to open their own farm in their basement," Pritzker said to some chuckles from legislators behind him. Pritzker went on to say, it's really more, after a bit more laughter, Pritzker took a position. People should have home grow, but the question is, how much?
Mm-hmm. See, whenever you even talk about marijuana, everybody giggles.
I know.
It's hard to think. We have this war against marijuana. I've been locking up black people for smoking reefer or possessing it for years and years and years. And yet, whenever we talk about it, people giggle.
Well, I blame Cheech and Chong.
I love Cheech and Chong.
Movies are funny.
They are funny, but marijuana is funny. If anybody smoked marijuana, around people smoke marijuana, by and large, it's kind of like giggle time. You know what I'm saying? Whereas I've been around many bars my whole life. People are knocking back the drinks, can get a little rough and raw. People had a few to drink. Everybody knows that. But somehow or other, it's the giggle drug that's illegal, and it's the hard drug.
Shout out to our friend Pat Rod on the YouTube live stream. He says, bring out the bong.
Yeah, bring out the bong, indeed. Yeah, so... It's been a while since I heard the bong. Yeah.
What's up, Pat Rod?
Yeah. So anyway, legalize marijuana, get it over with, and any money that we raise from it is icing on the cake.
So we're talking about homegrown marijuana here. And now to our friend and former guest on the Ben Joravsky Show. Go download the interview. Illinois State Rep Kelly Cassidy. Cassidy and Democratic State Senator and hopefully future guest of the Ben Joravsky Show, Heather Staines, have been working on legislation to legalize marijuana for years. Mm-hmm. Legislation that could include some extent to home grow by the end of the spring session. Spondeles talked with Cassidy and Staines. Cassidy said home grow is simply part of a larger discussion within a legalization measure. And despite some opposition to home grow, Cassidy said she hasn't heard from any legislators about pulling support for legalization should home grow be included. And Staines said the discussion over home grow remains, quote, open. Here's the quote from Staines. The number has generally stayed at 5 plants. Mm-hmm. That may end up changing, Staines said. There's still discussion about whether that should be medical or for everybody. Now, of course, our conservative friends in the state of Illinois aren't too keen on this whole deal. There are still 60 legislators who signed on as sponsors of a resolution that asked to slow down the process. Ben Joravsky, answer the question here. How much homegrown marijuana is too much homegrown marijuana? Once again, shout out to my Uncle Ron.
Yeah, I'm going to have to duck and dodge this one because it's been so long since I indulged in this pastime that I really don't know what 5 plants are. Monroe Anderson is far more knowledgeable in this subject. So I'll ask him, like, what is 5 plants? How much reefer does that even raise? Do you know, Monroe?
I've not grown any.
Oh, you're not grown. All right. So, and he doesn't inhale just like Bill Clinton.
Did I ever explain to you how the Bill doesn't inhale thing happens?
No.
To be true.
Wait, you actually believe Bill Clinton was telling the truth when he said
He was telling the truth.
What makes you say that?
Many years ago, I interviewed a young man who was working for an organization here in Illinois who was trying to get it medical in.
Medical marijuana
legal.
legal.
Probably 20 years ago.
All right.
And he says that a good friend of his was in London when Bill was on his Rhodes Scholarship. And Bill did not smoke dope, but he was very fond of brownies.
So that's
who isn't?
A typical Clintonism, where he tried it, but he didn't inhale.
What was that great little saying that Monroe came up with regarding another Clinton?
Oh my God! Eating ain't cheating.
Yeah,
right.
Monroe Anderson, ladies.
He's not talking about brownies.
Right.
Wasn't talking about brownies. That Monroe Anderson. I had never heard. I think you actually may have said that before. That so since he indulged in eating brownies, technically you could say he didn't inhale.
Right. And telling the truth.
And boy, there was a reason they called him Slick Willie.
Exactly.
He'd have fit right in with that Chicago City Council and those TIF deals.
Yeah, right.
I brought it back to the TIF
look
deal.
at that. There's our theme. There's our theme today.
All right, Monroe, 12 or 5 plants. Do you have an opinion on that?
I have no idea.
Okay, me neither.
I tried to grow one back when I was in college, 1 or 2
How'd that go?
on my top deck. It was pretty scrawny and it was pretty weak.
Yeah.
This stuff now I hear.
Oh yeah, here we go. I heard.
I hear it's potent.
Okay, all right, it's very potent. So anyway, I cannot weigh in on the 12 versus 5D. I'd like to have an opinion. I know I'm supposed to have an opinion about everything, but
well, let's just go 12 and see what happens. That's what I say, huh?
Okay, you seem to have some strong opinions on this one.
Let's go 12.
If the cops raid you and it's really 5, then you're up the creek.
That's all right, without a paddle.
So, how much homegrown marijuana is too much homegrown marijuana? Well, I guess we're still uncertain on that, but you'll now have an answer the next time someone asks you, hey, what else is news?
All right, let me tell you something. Something that Marty Ritter, our good friend that I just bumped to on Racine.
What's up, Marty?
Something that Marty Feldman, great comic. Did you ever see, what was that? Young Frankenstein?
Oh,
hilarious.
hang tight, millennials.
And something, speaking of millennials, Marty McFly.
Oh.
They all agree.
Millennial in the 80s, or a young guy in the 80s.
He was so millennialistic back in. He was like a bro before there were bros. Anyway, they all agree you did a great job. Give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. We got Monroe Anderson sitting here getting ready to talk Trump, 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 and Trump. We'll be right back.
Hey there, producer Dennis here. Thanks for finding and listening to the brand new Ben Joravsky Show. All right, so here's how this works. The Ben Joravsky Show live streams on the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel Tuesday through Friday, 1 until 3 p.m. Once the show is over, you can listen to the replay on our YouTube channel, or we throw it online for you to download by 4 p.m. Where can you download the Ben Joravsky Show, you may be asking yourself? Well, you may be asking yourself a fantastic question. You can find previous Ben Joravsky shows and guest interviews through several outlets. The Chicago Sun-Times Online, chicago.suntimes.com, the Chicago Reader Online, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, pick one. Just search for The Ben Joravsky Show. J-O-R-A, V as in victory, S-K-Y. So, let's recap. Tuesday through Friday, 1 until 3 p.m. Live streamed on the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel and downloadable by 4 at chicago.suntimes.com, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcast. Yes, the Ben Joravsky Show is back. We're live and downloaded. Tell your friends and enjoy the rest of the show.
This weekend, come explore the Admiral Theater's dark side. It's Strip Wars Volume 1, The Phantom Stripper, a parody show live at the Admiral Theater, 3940 West Lawrence and Pulaski, April 11th, 12th, and 13th in a theater not so far away. Do not miss Strip Wars, The Phantom Stripper, a parody show live at the Admiral Theater. For more information, call 773-478-8111 or visit admiralx.com. This is a totally nude show. Must be 18 years or older to enter.
Commercial break over. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Yes, indeed, we are live from the Chicago Sun-Times. Monroe Anderson, legendary reporter, former press spokesperson for Eugene Sawyer, in the studio with me, comes in once a week, every Wednesday. We used to call it Monroe Monday, but we're not on the air on Monday, so now we call, what do we call it?
We're calling it Monroe Midweek.
Monroe Midweek, and Monroe's going to ask for us to double his salary because last week's segment was the highest ranked Ben Joravsky show of all time. Tracy Bain, Monroe Anderson, and little Steve Cohen was here, the producer. And that was
Paula Fraley. Come on.
Paula Fraley as well, yes. A shout out one more time, Doc 10 Film Festival this Thursday. Thanks for reminding me, D. At the Davis Theater. And the Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez documentary will be showing on Thursday. Folks, I think they have select seats only for that. You might check it out on the internet, Doc 10 at the Davis Theater, the Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez documentary. What you going to say, Monroe? You're going to ask for a raise?
Oh, I was going to ask for a raise, and I want a subtitle. The Ben Joravsky Show with Monroe Anderson.
Oh, okay. Man, he's just moving in.
Hard bargain.
Hey, he's already cut a deal with another radio station where he took Monroe Monday, all right? It's all good. It's all good. All right, Monroe.
I'm getting rich.
He's getting rich, yeah. All right, Monroe, before we do the Trump deep dive, I told you I was going to ask you about Johnson Publishing's heartbreaking fall. It's on the front page of today's Sun-Times. Mary Mitchell wrote a good column about it. I urge everybody to check it out. When I was a kid, 5 billion years ago, Monroe Anderson, I used to love reading Ebony magazine. It's in the Nichols Junior High library and at the Evanston High School library, and it was just everything. It was the gossip, the celebrity, the pictures. They did this annual article where they would rank the top players, baseball players, over 100,000. And back in those days, believe it or not, there were a lot of black baseball players, African-American baseball players, not like today where there's fewer. So it was, I don't know, it was just always, and they always followed Muhammad Ali, you know what I mean? Yeah. You get your Muhammad Ali news and stuff.
Well, when you were a kid, I was an assistant editor at Ebony.
Okay, you're not that much older than me, all right? I was already not a kid by then. You were not assistant editor in 1968, okay?
Yeah, no, this was 72.
All right, 72. Well,
now, when I came to work for Ebony, I came from D.C., the National Observer, to work for Ebony, and the building was just completed.
Here in Chicago,
building,
the Ebony building on South Michigan.
Yeah, right, exactly. And it was incredible. It had telephones. Wow. 1972. Now, the problem with that, of course, there were only about 3 other companies in the world that had them, so you didn't have many people you could actually talk to.
Yeah,
but it was incredible. And the other really incredible thing about it was any black person who was anybody came to Ebony, to Johnson, when he or she was in town.
Johnson being the founder.
Yeah, and Johnson Publishing Company is the title. And so I had lunch as an assistant editor. I had lunch with Lena Horne.
Tell our young listeners, Lena Horne, great singer, actress,
right,
absolutely gorgeous.
Right.
Sanford and Son, Red Fox would always go, talk about Lena Horne. How beautiful.
I met Sanford and Son there. They did a tour, and so I met them there. I mean, the list was just went
You met
on
Red
and-
Fox?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Was he funny, or was he like a comedian who wasn't funny when he?
No, he was walking through the building, and they had all these gorgeous women working there. So Fred was going, "Hello, lunch."
That's Monroe Anderson again.
The views and actions of Monroe Anderson do not reflect those of the Ben Joravsky Show.
Oh my God!
What did I say? I've had an interesting life.
Red Fox. You mixed Fred Sanford and Red Fox and turned him into Fred Fox. Wow. Yeah. So a lot of celebrities coming through. Remember meet Muhammad Ali? Did you ever see him coming through Ebony? Or?
No, I met him in college.
Yeah.
At Indiana University. But going back to when I first started at Ebony, my managing editor gave a party in his apartment in Prairie Shores for Billy D. Williams. Okay.
Billy D. Williams, great actor from the 70s.
Yeah, and Billy's at the party. All these Ebony models, fashion fair models were there. They completely ignored him because he was a nobody. So we stood in the corner talking about black exploitation movies for much of the night.
Wait a minute. You're telling me that Billy D. Williams was at this party, and the guy's absolutely gorgeous.
Well,
they still
he was there promoting Brian's song. He was in town to promote Brian's song, which hadn't even come out.
I see.
Okay, so they paid him. No, he had his sort of collegiate look. He had a short afro. He had a blue blazer and a white shirt on, etc. Maybe 6 months later, the movie comes out.
Brian's song, made for TV show.
No. The movie about Billie Holiday.
Oh, Lady Sings the Blues.
Lady Sings
with
the
Diana
Blues.
Ross.
Yes, comes out, and he's this sex symbol in that.
Yes.
The women were going gaga. The same women who had ignored him at the party now we're going gaga. Billy D. Williams.
All right, here you go. Here's a trivia question.
Okay.
This is hard. I'm coming out of nowhere.
All right.
In Lady Sings the Blues,
Yes.
who played the role of the piano man?
Richard Pryor.
Get that guy a blue Mustang. That's the first time I ever saw Richard Pryor in that movie.
Yeah.
I had never seen him before that movie.
Well, when I was at the National Observer, I tried to interview Richard Pryor at the cellar door in D.C. He was playing there.
You tried?
I tried.
And you failed?
I worked for the National Observer.
Uh-huh.
I try to get back to do the interview. I get as far as to the green room. He's there with a couple of women, and there appear to be white stuff on the table.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't want to be interviewed by me. He says, no interview. And so I'm turning around, and he says to me, and tell your boss, what's it? The national the National Review, the right wing.
Oh, William Buckley.
Yeah, right. Tell your boss, William Buckley, I said hi.
He mixed up
he
the one
mixed
with
him
the
up,
other.
and so he wouldn't give me the interview because he thought I was.
Wow. Now I bet he would interview you if you were for Ebony Magazine.
Oh yeah. I spent a week in New York with Stevie Wonder, supposedly interviewing him, but it never came to fruition for some reason or another.
This is for Ebony.
Yeah, for Ebony.
All right, now let me ask you this. Before we get to Trump, Ebony Johnson Publications plunges into bankruptcy is the headline. Is this the demise, the downfall of Ebony and the empire that John Johnson built in the 50s, 60s, and 70s? Is this a sign? What is it a sign of? Decline in just the general decline of readership or integration?
Integration is a problem. The Newsweek was sold for $1, remember?
Yeah.
This is hard times for magazines, for the printed word, period. I mean, everybody's in trouble. Chicago, what's really interesting is that when I moved here in 1972 to work for Ebony, Chicago was arguably the black capital of America. Mm-hmm. You had Johnson Publishing, you had Johnson, the hair product people, you had Parker House sausages. I mean, you had all these different major league companies, all of which are now gone. And the center of Black America arguably has now moved to Atlanta.
Well, there's an article in the Tribune the other day. I can't remember who wrote it. I'm going to ask James Muhammad about this when he comes in. Right now, Chicago has Lori Lightfoot as mayor, a black woman.
Right.
Has Tony Perkwinkle, president of the county board, a black woman.
Right.
Kim Fox, state's attorney, a black woman. The lieutenant governor is a black woman.
Right.
The treasurer of the city of Chicago is a black woman.
Yeah.
And I'm probably forgetting other people on the list. So it's sort of like a glory day for black elected officials. And yet the population, the black population of the city of Chicago continues to fall, and it will probably continue to fall as the city continues to gentrify.
Right.
So what do you think about that? How could there be, if it's such a black, if this is such a glory moment for black political officials, what's that say, in relation to the falling black population?
It says that Lori Lightfoot has a lot of work to do.
Well, if she wants to keep black people in the city of Chicago.
I imagine she does. Well, you heard about how the city council has voted on.
We've been talking about it a lot. And
and the thing is, I'm sure you were upset by it.
Yes, very. I've been talking about it.
And I'm not, because
I also said that, by the way, that you would have a different point of view on this.
Yeah, because she cut a deal to get much more participation among black contractors and women.
Well, I'll tell you what,
and that's
Monroe.
where the jobs are.
Okay, I'll tell you this right now. If that's a legitimate deal that she cut, and that's not window dressing,
right?
Then I'll tip my hat to her. Okay.
Okay.
Right now, people of the city of Chicago, the argument I'm making, have many pressing bills that are coming before them, including police contract, a firefighter contract, a teacher contract, pension obligations.
Right.
Lots of roads need to be repaved. Lots of bridges need to be fixed.
Right.
It's going to cost a lot of money, and somehow or other, we're going to have to raise the money to pay for all those bills. The city of Chicago, and it was not Lori Lightfoot. I have to make this point. This is Rahm's plan, not Lori's plan.
Yeah, right.
All right. They're going to take very valuable land off the taxable land. You can't tax it anymore, and because it's going to be for a TIF. So that's going to mean your property taxes are going up to pay all these obligations.
I went to one of the Lincoln Yards meetings, and Michelle Smith, my older person, personally guaranteed me that my taxes were going up.
Oh, she did? How? She knows something you don't know. All right, we'll move on from the story of your property taxes and talk about Donald Trump. Number one on the agenda, Donald Trump and his taxes. Monroe, we've been talking about this for a long, long time.
Yes.
And it seems as though the Democrats are finally zeroing in on the tax, Donald Trump's taxes.
Yes, and they're going to get him. Although one of his people said that we'd never get them, but we're going to get them.
Okay, now, how do you think the Democrats are going to obtain these taxes?
There's this law, I forget the number on it, 6301 or something like that. The law says that if the Ways and Means Committee, House Ways and Means Committee, asks for taxes of any individual or corporation, they shall be provided. And anybody who's been to law school, who knows somebody who's been to law school, knows that shall means shall. It doesn't mean if or maybe or probably or anything. It means that's what you do. Trump is resisting it. He and his lawyers right now, they're trying to, they're being very Trumpian about it. But there will be a court case, and the law is as plain as can be. So it'll drag it out, but they will have to do that. Also, in New York, there's now a movement to get Trump's state taxes. And now they won't be identical to the federal taxes, but they'll still have much of the same valuable information in it.
Now, wait, let's go back to that bill that you were alluding to.
Yeah.
It's in the House, did you say?
What?
The federal movement to is in the House?
It's the House Ways and Means Committee.
All right. And so the Democrats now control the House, so you figure that'll pass the Democrats.
No, it's not a problem with that.
But what about the Senate?
No, you don't have to get the Senate. The law says that if the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee asks for the tax returns.
Yeah, I get you.
Of a corporation or a citizen, that they shall, not maybe.
So yeah, this is if they press this is going straight to court. You know that.
Exactly right. If they that's because the deadline was today, and nothing's happening.
Yeah.
So no, they're going to press it. Trump is trying to fight it. What his people are saying is that that's only if it has to be for a specific purpose, not just as a fishing expedition.
And so how do you get around that?
Okay, so what the Democrats are saying is that they are investigating the IRS, not Trump. They're investigating the IRS to see if the IRS is in fact auditing Trump, and if they're doing a good job.
So in other words, they're going to get around. The specificity has to do with an investigation of the IRS, not so much Donald Trump, but a collateral benefit, if you will, of that investigation of the IRS would be to obtain. Oh man, so some slick guys in that.
Oh, I know now.
That sounds like some Chicago TIF lawyers there, man.
Right, exactly. No, but one complication is that it's a felony to give any sort of media anything to talk about it publicly. You can look at them, but you can't talk about them publicly. You can't make the tax returns public.
It's a felony to talk about them, but you can look at them.
You can look at them.
So does that mean the Democrats, if they obtain them, can put them on the internet?
They cannot do it. It's a felony.
So the Democrats can look at them and that's it?
Well, they can look at them, and because they are already doing investigations, let's say in Trump's tax returns, they discover that he's been slipping you $50,000 a week for some criminal aspect.
Let's just say that, okay?
Yeah, right. Okay.
We don't know that. We're just saying that.
Then they can bring you in.
I see.
And you have to publicly talk about what happened under oath.
So what will it take before we, the people, just the ordinary citizens of the United States of America, get to see Donald Trump's taxes?
We may not get to see them in the federal taxes. We probably will get to see the state taxes, and we may get to see the. Okay, there's one other thing. The Republicans shot themselves in the foot back in 2014. If you remember, they were accusing Obama of using the IRS to punish right-wing organizations.
I remember that, yeah.
Okay. Now, that was not supposed to be made public, but the Republicans, trying to embarrass the Democrats, insisted that if they passed some law that made it possible for the IRS reports of these right-wing organizations to become public. So they set a precedent that the Democrats may be able to use.
How so?
The House Democrats may be able to use to expose Trump's taxes.
So, all right.
It's very interesting.
All right. Now, what about the possibility, and I'm surprised this hasn't happened already, just a whistleblower, if you will, in the IRS, the federal government, leaks them to a reporter.
Felony. Dude, are you that much of a whistleblower that you want to go to jail for?
So who would go to jail? Would the reporter go to jail as well as the whistleblower?
Just the whistleblower.
And they would probably squeeze the reporter to get him and her to give up the name of the whistleblower.
Exactly.
They would take that very seriously.
Exactly.
So that's not going to happen.
Well, probably not. I mean, it depends on who it is and how righteous they feel.
Well, I mean, the Pentagon Papers were released.
Exactly.
What's this? Snowden released thousands of government documents.
Right, and he's hanging out in London.
Yeah.
Can't come outdoors.
No, he's not in. He's in Moscow. He's in Russia. Snowden's in Russia.
No,
yeah.
I'm thinking of WikiLeaks.
Assange.
Right,
who I don't know where he is at the moment.
He's in London.
Yeah. Okay. So in other words, it's possible that it would happen,
Right.
but there's.
And the other thing that I'm not sure about, I've not seen any reporting on it, but my guess is that Mueller has had those taxes also, because he couldn't do a serious investigation without looking at Trump's taxes. So, of course, it'll be redacted in the Barr report.
All right, let's get to, that's a perfect transition to one of my favorite topics, redactions. This is a pet peeve of mine, Monroe, right below TIFs, and how our government limits our access to information that I think is just should be ordinarily provided on a regular routine basis. I've been writing about this forever in the local scene here in the city of Chicago. I don't write about it obviously so much on the federal level. But this fight that's brewing over the Mueller report is fascinating. First of all, it's been over a month. Am I right? No, about 2 weeks. How long?
2 weeks.
It's been 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I don't understand why it wasn't immediately released from the get-go.
If Trump was in fact exonerated, as he claims he was, it would be on billboards around Chicago. I mean, it'd be everywhere, the exoneration.
In other words, if the report exonerated Trump as much as Trump pretends it exonerates him, then it would have been released.
Exactly.
And we would have a copy of it right here on this desk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And since that's not the case, then they're playing games. Barr's going to have a color-coded report, which is going to look like the subway map.
With the red line, the blue line.
Exactly.
All right, so the different codes will be, instead of in the city of Chicago, what they do, Monroe, or the state of Illinois, when they don't want you to see public documents, they black it out with they supposedly black it out with markers. Sometimes there was a story I did once about the Board of Education. I didn't want the public to see documents regarding the banning of Persepolis, a comic book. And they didn't black out the documents with magic marker. They simply put some kind of black picture over it, like computer laid it. And so this savvy guy who got the information from a Freedom of Information Act request figured out how to take the computer-generated graphic off the document, exposing everything that...
well, as you know, blacking out things doesn't always work. In Hidden Figures, the movie, they had some information blacked out theoretically, and the Taraji P. Henderson's character was able to see through it and come up with the names, and they were trying to figure out, well, how could she do this?
So it doesn't always work out. But in this particular case, instead of just doing it the old Chicago way of just blacking everything out, they're going to have different colors blacking things out or hiding things.
Yeah, right, exactly. Whether it's a court case that needs to be protected or somebody's reputation.
Yeah.
And that's the tricky one.
Yeah.
Is blocking out it because it might be harm to someone, say like Jared or Ivanka.
And that would be the interesting thing of because that would get everybody wondering, if once you give a suggestion or a hint of what's being concealed, then everybody's going to start the guessing game.
Right.
And based on the color code, it's,
And what Congress is saying is that as members of Congress, they have a right to see, the committee has a right to see it all. No redactions whatsoever. And the Republicans and Trump is fighting that.
Yeah.
And the other thing Trump did this morning was he is encouraging that an investigation of the investigators take place.
Yes.
And Barr has said he's going to do it. He is so much he's not our attorney general. He's the Republicans' attorney general.
Or Donald Trump's.
Yeah, right, right.
Barr investigating the investigators. Trump immediately said that's what he was going to do.
Right.
When he claimed the report exonerated him, and he said, we're going to investigate the investigators, essentially is what he said.
Right.
And Barr, in his testimony today, I believe he was testifying while we were getting ready for the show in Congress, said that that the FBI, I don't know if he said the FBI, should be careful about this, but he said they were spying on Donald Trump's campaign.
Yeah, he's going to check to see who was spying.
Yeah, and he was going to check to see who was spying.
Yes.
So that strongly implies that somebody was spying if he has to
Exactly.
check to see
Exactly.
who was spying.
And of course, Trump keeps claiming that the investigation started with the Steele report.
Yeah.
And that's not true. The counterintelligence investigation started after Papadopoulos got drunk and was bragging about having dirt on Hillary.
That is correct.
That kicked it off.
By the way, I'm happy to say my next guest, James Muhammad, is in the studio. James Muhammad has entered the studio. Love it when my guests come on time.
Right.
We're going to bring James Muhammad on, James Muhammad with Monroe Anderson, and we're going to open up the conversation a little bit. Before we do that, Monroe Anderson, what do you think is more likely? That we will get a thorough investigation into the investigators, or we will actually see Donald Trump's taxes?
We're going to see Donald Trump's taxes. One way or the other, we will see Donald Trump's taxes.
Before the 2020 presidential election?
Yes.
One way or the other?
One way or the other.
Hook or crook?
Yeah, leak or
federal. It'll go to the Supreme Court. You realize that?
Yeah.
It will go. We got to bring Coogan in to discuss this.
You need to have him in.
Having it to discuss this, the legal ramifications. Trump will resist this all the way to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, but Trump has so many things to resist because he's done so much dirt that Trump is gonna go down from 1,000 cuts. I mean, they're coming at him all kind of ways. There's the investigation on the inauguration, where his inauguration, contrary to what he claimed, was larger than Obama's.
Yeah.
Well, right, exactly. It wasn't, but he spent way more money. It cost, way more money, and his talent was Kid Rock or somebody like that. And it was Beyonce and Jay-Z and a whole bunch of people at the Obama talent, real expensive talent.
Yeah.
And yet Obama's inauguration was much cheaper, and one Russian individual contributed $50,000 to the inauguration.
So they're going to dig into that one.
Oh
as
yeah,
well.
no, because they were using it as a money laundering, let's get rich scheme.
All right, that's Monroe Anderson. I'm Ben Joravsky. James Muhammad is in the studio. We're going to broaden the conversation, talk about all kinds of things when we return.
The Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you by the Chicago Sun-Times. For the latest in Chicago and Illinois news, sports, weather, and the latest in national news from a real Chicago frame of mind and real Chicago writers, check out the Chicago Sun-Times. Read the daily paper or online at chicago.suntimes.com. And hey, if you have a little extra cash, subscribe. And by the Chicago Reader. For a deeper dive in the daily Chicago news and for all of what's going on in this city, you gotta read the Reader. Music, arts and culture, film, extensive event calendars, concert listings, and more, including weekly political columns from writers like Maya Dukmasova and, yes, our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader is free in newsstands and at chicagoreader.com. That's chicagoreader.com.
Hey, everybody. How's it going? Hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky Show for Wednesday, April 10th. The headphones are right over there, guys. There you go. All right, cool. Your Ben Joravsky Show, hour number 2 for Wednesday, April 10th is just moments away. But before we get going into that, we would like to thank the following unions for helping bring bring back the Ben Joravsky Show. First up, it's the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, not Aerosmith, Local 126 and District 8. How's it going, Ryan Kelly? The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Thank you once again to those unions for jumping on board with us and bringing back the Ben Joravsky Show. And, of course, today's Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you by the Chicago Federation of Labor. Hour number 2, let's go. Yes, it is Wednesday, April 10th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. In this hour of the program, we still got Monroe Anderson in studio. We welcome our favorite grassroots organizer, Amisha Patel, and James Muhammad of SEIU Healthcare, Illinois, Indiana. And now your host, Chicago Reader columnist, Benny J. Ben Joravsky.
Yes, indeed. James Muhammad is in the studio. Amisha Patel is on her way. Monroe tried to leave, but I got Miles to lock the door. He's not going anywhere for a little while. We're going to broaden the conversation. James Muhammad and Monroe Anderson, apparently they're old friends. I didn't know that. I'm the last guy to know anything. They were like hugging when James walked in the studio. I'm like, how do you guys know each other? That's a long story. We'll get to all the goodies, but first, the doctor has an update, young man.
Absolutely. My name's Dennis, not a doctor. James, remember, you got to speak into the microphone here when we get on the air. All right, cool. All right, here we go. More 2020 Democratic presidential candidate news. After the allegations of inappropriate touching, after they came out against him, well, we have the Joe Biden question now.
Grandpa?
Well, get ready, folks, because now I think we have the Bernie question. All right. In the last hour, we talked about the latest news involving Senator Elizabeth Warren. She released her 2018 tax returns. And let's just say she makes a modest living wage. All right. And Ben,
we're all more modest than she is. I don't think if you put all the incomes of everybody in this room. Well, Monroe's got a lot of sophisticated investments in the Cayman Islands we're not talking about. But other than Monroe's Cayman Island investments.
Oh, man. Him and Pritzker, huh? Got something going on there. All right. So a modest living wage, all right. But Bernie Sanders, all right. Ben, you asked about this earlier.
Yeah.
Bernie is planning to release his tax returns soon, but we got to talk about what will be revealed when Bernie's tax returns are released. Mr. $27 himself makes way more than $27, like way more. Bernie Sanders is a millionaire.
I did not know that.
Yeah, now we all know that a core campaign message from Sanders has been that millionaires and billionaires have cornered too much wealth and power in this country. Well, what the hell, dude? You're a millionaire. So the Bernie Sanders question, I'll ask all of you guys, does Bernie Sanders being a millionaire hurt his campaign message?
All right, I'm going to ask this question. I'm going to just throw this one over to Monroe and James. And by the way, I'll set it up. I don't know if you guys heard this when I was talking about this earlier. We'll start with you, James. When Bernie Sanders was on the Trevor Noah show earlier this week, Trevor got a pretty good joke off. He said that, Bernie still hasn't released his taxes. And, of course, Donald Trump hasn't either. And Trevor Noah said that his suspicion is that Donald Trump is concealing his tax returns because he doesn't want people to realize how poor he is, and that Bernie Sanders is doing the same because he doesn't want people to realize how rich he is, okay? And Bernie got a good chuckle out of it and said, just you wait, I'm going to release my taxes. That's my Bernie Sanders imitation.
He's getting there.
It's pretty bad, too.
Yeah, he's getting there.
I'll tell you what, that James Muhammad is a tough critic.
You got new digs, too, man.
Yeah,
I'm trying
Before
to
we get to the question.
check them out.
Yes.
And I expected to hear some Miles Davis since I was brought in here by Miles, man,
He was
I
named.
know you're a jazz man, right?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm not his dad, but his dad is a good friend of mine. His dad named him Keith Cap Porter out there listening.
What up, Cap?
His dad named him for Miles Davis. Big jazz man. Wow. So, anyway, what do you think of these digs?
I'm impressed, man. But I had to park up in Wisconsin to get here, though.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you could have
It's pretty
taken the
bad,
blue line.
man. It's bad.
Yeah, no, it is. Parking's pretty bad here. So I'm welcoming you to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So what was the question? I can't remember the question.
Bernie Sanders being a millionaire hurt his campaign.
Yes. So what's the question?
Does Bernie Sanders? Have we established That he is a millionaire?
Yeah, he's admitted that he's a millionaire. In fact, CNN is saying he's handling it pretty poorly here. He says the quote here is, I've written a lot of books. If you write a lot of books, you can be a millionaire too.
Okay, you can be if you sell the books. So anyway, what do you think? Does it hurt Bernie Sanders' campaign, the appeal he's making, the fact that it turns out he's a millionaire?
Well, I mean, did they know that the last time that he was out there? I don't blame anybody for being a millionaire. What I blame them for is hoarding wealth and not speaking to the issues of the people who suffer and who are striving to make a living. J.B. Pritzker, he's a billionaire. Right now, he's talking the talk. We had to see if he'll walk the walk. If Bernie gathered a lot of support in this last time, so. If he's going to speak to the issues of working people, poor people, and make sure that money gets to the people who really need it, and share his ideas on how to do that, hey, make the money that you are talented enough to make. But do not hoard wealth and hide your wealth on a Cayman Island bank account and then take TIF money and that could go to keep schools open and things of that sort. So that would be what would concern me about folks who make more money than you, Ben.
As impossible as that sounds. Monroe, you agree with him on that?
Yeah, and the thing is, I can't remember how long ago this was, but there was a story maybe 20, 25 years ago that said that there were 1 million millionaires in America at that time.
How many years ago was this?
20, 25 years ago. I can't remember the exact, but and of course, there's many, many more millionaires now.
Yeah.
I've been a millionaire next door since 1998. Now, a millionaire next door there was a book written about it, is a person who drives Hondas instead of Mercedes, who clips coupons, et cetera, saves and invests their money. And so on paper, they're a millionaire. But they don't. It's not a millionaire. When I was a kid, my father told me that if I had $1 million, I could live off of it the rest of my life. Now, if you have $1 million and it's not an investment, it lasts you 10 years if you just have $100,000 a year lifestyle. Yeah. So being a millionaire is not. Bernie should have dropped the millionaire thing and just stuck with billionaires. The people who have $1,000 million. Well, that's where the wealth is.
I presume if you're talking about raising the income tax, the top rate on the income tax, and if you're saying a person has a taxable income of $1 million, that's an income. Annual income. Now, I'm not talking about the gross, income
wealth,
of all your
wealth is one thing.
Yeah.
Income is another.
Yeah.
My income. I'm on a fixed income. I have a Social Security check coming in.
Yeah, so you're not a good example of what we're talking about here, Monroe.
Right, exactly.
You're just like a broke-ass writer like the rest of us.
Right, exactly. I'm house rich and paycheck poor.
So, all right, James, that leads me to this. The general question, since we're on this topic, I wanted to ask you about Ebony Magazine, but I just want to get to this one right now. As a civilization, if you will, do you think we're heading in the right direction in terms of more equitably taxing people to raise money? So many things are on my mind when I ask this question, but I'll just ask it in the most general way. Your union is very concerned with a more equitable distribution of income and a more equitable way of raising money to fund government. Do you think we're heading in the right direction right now?
Well, I think the fair tax proposal is in the right direction. Just as a side note, I was watching 60 Minutes Sunday. I don't think it was a rebroadcast, and it had a billionaire on there. And I can't remember his name, but he was like the 18th richest in the States, but he was a billionaire. His concern was that he was in support of redistribution of the wealth because there's so much wealth in 1 or 2% of the population that the rest of the population at some point they're going to, old France back in whatever century it was, when they're coming for you with
18th century.
18th century with clubs and everything to pull you out of your castle.
Yeah.
And that kind of sentiment can spread in a country that the wealth distribution is so wide that people just get so, can I say pissed off on your show?
Yes.
So pissed off.
Look, the
that
guy
they-
said next to you says so many
Monroe
followers.
He's broken so many rules on this show. You don't even want to know, James.
that they'll come looking for them. And his concern was that we don't, let's not get to that point. And again, what J.B. Pritzker is trying to do, and you always can tell where the issue is by who's on one side and who's on the other. Most folks who don't have any money would support a fair tax. And most folks who got a lot of money who aren't, who really are more greedy than rich, they just want to keep hoarding wealth, then they don't want to figure out how to make things more equitable, how to make things fairer. So
Jamie
Yeah.
Dimon, who is the head of Chase, has called. He's beginning to sound like Elizabeth Warren. He's talking about the equity, unevenness of everything. What they're concerned about, because what happens? There's been studies on this. When the income, wealth inequity grows to be so great, then you get social unrest, because at some point people go, "What the devil is going on?"
James, when you and I were youngsters in college, there was a book, Fox Piven. I don't know if you read that book, and it talked about this very point that Monroe is making. It talked about the riots of the 1960s and how they led to a more fair distribution of money and an expansion of social programs, an expansion of the social, and it made a connection between civil disobedience, uncivil disobedience, insurrections, whatever you want to call them, and actual action by the government. I am not in any way advocating insurrections, but I'm just saying what Monroe is getting at. There is a correlation between how government spends its money, how it raises its money, and just the tone and the tenor of.
Yeah, but I would also add that, it might have led to social, the spreading of social services or social accommodation, et cetera, but it gave relief, but it didn't solve the problem. It calmed the nerves of folk who are out there protesting. Maybe you could say it pacified that moment, but it didn't lead to generational wealth building that had been destroyed prior to the 60s and the 50s. I mean, at one point we had things. I'm speaking about African Americans, black people in general right now, where we had farms. We had towns that were in southern towns that were self-sustaining. They had the rich and the poor. That was destroyed intentionally.
Yeah, by white
farms were taken, and folks fled north. So that wealth just disappeared. And so when the uprising occurred, they were occurring for to be included, but not necessarily. And that was another issue. We don't need to go into that. But the generational wealth that could have been attained by now for our communities, that never happened because they were intentionally destroyed.
Yeah, in fact, I read a piece last week before, that the average savings in the black household is $4.
What?
Yes, $4 bank account. Average now. Obviously, I'm not talking about. That means a whole lot of people have zero money.
I didn't see that article. Wow.
Yeah.
$4?
I was shocked. Right, exactly.
That's not much of a cushion.
Right, exactly. And 40% of Americans now, we're not talking about blacks, we're talking about Americans, period. 40%, if they have a $400 emergency, they can't cover it. 40%.
Well, with this I'm going to bring it down to a local level. What just happened today? Amisha Patel, ladies and gentlemen, will be in the studio soon. We'll be talking much greater detail about this from the Grassroots Collaborative. She's been following these two TIF deals. James Muhammad, I know your union opposed the TIF deals, and one of the the fundamental criticisms I have about the way we do TIF deals in the city of Chicago is that they're linked to the wealth of a neighborhood. The wealthier a neighborhood, the more gentrification is going on in the neighborhood, the more money will be raised and generated for that neighborhood's development. So you have poor neighborhoods on the south and west side that really could use a shot in the arm, but because they're poor, they're not gentrifying, they're not raising a lot of TIF dollars to spur economic development. The wealthiest neighborhoods that don't really need the help are raising the TIF dollars, and they get the money. And we saw that. That's why we have $2.3 billion going to relatively wealthy neighborhoods. In your opinion, is that a step back from the ideals of fairly distributing money, or are you assured by Lori Lightfoot's statement that she's going to make sure that there's more minority and black entrepreneurs getting the contracts on some of these deals?
Well, to your first question, no, I don't think it's a fair way necessarily. I'm not sure though. Are they able to take some TIF money from one part of one TIF district and use it in another at all?
You can do that if they're adjoining TIF districts. So it's called porting. You can move it from one to the other. To get that TIF money from, let's say, the north side of Chicago at the corner of North and Elston, where this particular Lincoln Yards project, to get it all the way down to Roseland, let's say, or Pullman, or the far south side, or Austin on the west side. I don't know if you can do that by current law.
All right. Well, bottom line to me, it's all about priorities. If I look at a city and I see poor communities, and these communities have been crying out for 50 years now, 40, 50 years now, that means the priorities of whatever administration, we've had like 3, those priorities are not to improve the conditions necessarily on the south and west side, unless, as you say, we see signs of gentrification. So what does that mean? That means that folk are only interested in folk who have wealth and people who businesses, etc., but people who already are living okay. So the best city you could have is where community neighborhoods are all thriving. Then you don't have to worry about some of the negative things that are occurring, and it makes the city more attractive. The people who run the city, I believe, think that buildings and glitz and glitter are what attract people to a particular city. That does attract some tourists, but it doesn't. It doesn't just keep people here.
Yeah, so. And the thing is, the Republicans now are talking about socialism, how the Democrats are pushing socialism. And they use Venezuela as their poster child. Mm-hmm. The reality is the 10 happiest countries in the world, their citizens they're socialist countries where they don't have to worry about health. They don't have to worry about being homeless. I mean, we rank number 17 among the 10. Canada's number 7 or 8, just as an example. You have one of the Democratic candidates. He's an Asian American. His last name is Yang. He is proposing that everybody gets $12,000, $1,000 a month. Every citizen. Once you're 18, that you just automatically, so that you can have some dignity. You're just not piss pot poor.
Yeah. Well, we in our local level, in the treasurer's race, Mayor Pawar, who's currently the alderman of the 47th Ward, he's stepping down, but he was running for treasurer. He advocated guaranteed income. I don't know if you saw that, James, but he advocated guaranteed income. And he was defeated in Chicago. The city of Chicago defeated him and elected Melissa Conyers Irving as the treasurer. And she bashed him pretty hard in her campaign commercials, saying he's going too far, talked about him raising taxes, and didn't come out and call him a socialist, Monroe, but, played that kind of card. James Muhammad, do you think that a politician can survive running for office, advocating the kinds of programs that Monroe was alluding to in this country, or will that socialist label just ultimately topple the campaign.
You mean the $1,000 or guaranteed wage?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times the labels, we do play on labels. So I'm going to just start right there. Socialism has become a bad word, but I will just also state that most of those folks who are talking about socialists, they're church-going people. You know, they're church-going people. They're the religious right. If they walked up on their main man, they would call him a socialist. And he, you know, this guy who was homeless, they wouldn't open up their bank account for that guy. Mm-hmm. Yet, you know, they proclaim that type of thing. So, you know, I would say, yeah, you have to look out for the least of these. Now, more importantly to me, yeah, maybe, you know, we could talk about the guaranteed wage piece. I'm not sure on how that, because I haven't had a lot of conversations or you know, looked into it as much. But how about let's make sure that every school has the same amount of money to educate folks, because that's what, in my opinion, if you're closing schools, that means young children are now with nowhere to go or put in, as we have seen, dangerous situations instead of learning. So what's the the thinking behind that? Why would you even do that? Why won't you come with another proposal? So number one, that's an issue. I don't care if you want to call, you know, socialism or capitalism or whatever you want to call it. The bottom line is the things that have happened in this city are against working and poor people. Mm-hmm. It could be corrected if the priorities are corrected, and that if people would realize that making those at the bottom, as I think Reverend Jackson said, the least raising the ladder from the bottom would improve the city, and it wouldn't be much out of those who have the wealth. It wouldn't, you know, dent their pockets probably. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that is my thought.
Daley and Emmanuel both have been trying to turn this city into Paris. Mm-hmm. If you've ever been to Paris, the middle class, the wealthy all live in the city of Paris. Mm-hmm. And it's surrounded, there's a ring of poor suburbs around where the people who don't make much money, mm-hmm. they all live there. That's what the plan has been. Yeah. This is why you've seen the raising of public housing projects.
Exactly. I was going to say, plan for transformation, the Renaissance 2020. Planners plan like 20, 25 years in advance. So everything you see happening in Chicago, why is it that those same things are happening in every major city across the country? The same things are happening. So somewhere, rich folks are getting together and plan, like right now, they are looking at 2045. And what will the cities look like? What will the suburbs look like in 2045? And you will be seeing new plans for transformations, new plans coming out that you won't realize was a plan for your removal or, you know, that was targeted at you until it's happening in your face.
All right, to that point. And by the way, the seeds of so much of these plantings were actually planted in 1973 or so when old man Daley, Richard J. Daley, put together a planning report that the city has almost been following to a T. All right, James, your union supported Toni Preckwinkle in this last election. She was defeated decisively by Lori Lightfoot. When you thinking about the sorts of issues that you and Monroe have been discussing, the planning in the city of Chicago, the way the city of Chicago seems to be determined to shape its future, do you have any strong sense that Lori Lightfoot will continue those plannings along those lines, or do you think she'll resist those plannings? What's your thoughts?
It would have been nice to see her voice more strongly that we should wait on this TIF vote or the votes that took place for 78 and the Lincoln project.
Lincoln Yards
project. It would have been nice, that would have shown more sticking to the guns that she was trying to talk about during some of the campaign. I you know, it's one thing to say something when you're not in the seat, but once you sit in that seat, the real reality come. You see it frontal, and you see who's pulling strings on that seat. So, you know, I'm hoping that some real change occurs. I don't have the greatest expectation. I congratulate her, Lori Lightfoot, on her victory. Obviously, we were behind the other candidate, but the proof will be in the pudding after a month or two to see where she's headed. It's a new council. That's another good thing. A new council with some more progressive voices on it. If that body sticks together and bring a few more on, you may see some real change. There's a possibility to see real change if they exert their muscle in the city council to make something different happen. And what that different is more priorities on some of our neighborhoods. And hopefully they have the better ideas for that.
What do you think, Monroe?
Like I said, I can understand why she did a flip-flop on 78 and Lincoln Yards with the contracts. The contractors, the building contractors, because that will create, if done properly, will create real jobs in the black community, good paying jobs with black contractors. Now, again, it's how it's implemented. In 1978, at the Tribune, I did an investigation on set-asides, where these contracts, they put 25% of the contracts set aside for minority contractors and women. And what they were doing, in fact, Jesse Jackson's half-brother, Noah Robinson, had more, he was fronting more set-asides than anybody. He was personally getting rich, but none of the black contractors were.
Yeah.
So if you get that situation, of course, then it's nothing to it. But if there are real contractors getting real jobs, it will have an impact on the south and west sides of the city.
But I'll add to that, based on what I've seen. So they put out their initial proposal, and then they had to backtrack because of pressure. And it went from maybe 300 affordable housing to maybe 600. And it went from, they increased the amount that would go to minority and women-led companies. So that means there was a lot of room already there to do what would really have been satisfying to people and maybe not have been as much of a reaction to it had there been real genuine thought and a rollout of, well, here's what we want to do. Here's where the black community, the brown community will benefit. This is for the amount of money they're talking about, the money to those black contractors. I mean, I don't think that's no real thing to get up and jump around about. And what investment will they make in the continuation of those contractors to grow, to make sure that some folks are trained and get on the job training for some of this? Yeah. And why did we have to protest or raise our voices to get more affordable housing? Because they didn't plan for it to be an affordable place to live. So to me, it's it's
walking distance from my house. So
that's why Monroe is happy.
Right.
No,
No. My taxes are going to go up more as a result. No, I'm not happy.
Everybody. Now we're getting to the tax issue. Just so there's nobody out there who actually believes the propaganda that Mayor Rahm and his lackeys put out. I'm telling you right now, folks, we don't have a healthy discussion about TIF deals because we do not explain how they impact us. But everybody in this room, I believe everybody in this room lives in the city of Chicago. Oh, okay, almost everybody. Somebody doesn't live in the city of Chicago. Everybody in the city of Chicago, their taxes will go up because of these deals. One more time, they are taking land off the tax rolls. If you take land off the tax rolls, people, that means you have to raise the rate on all the rest of the existing land to compensate for the money you're not getting from those property that you're taking off the tax rolls. It's so obvious. And yet, people in the city of Chicago either don't want to hear it, or they just hear it gets a little convoluted, complicated, James Muhammad, and they just say, I don't know. That's what Ben says.
No, it's the
city doesn't say it. And then their taxes go up.
No, it's the politicians having their will. there were some of those protesters out there at City Hall were from Lincoln Park. People, community groups in Lincoln Park, who did not want that development to go up as planned.
Yeah,
it's going to be more congested, high rises.
That's a whole other issue, though. The impact on the local area. All right. I think our next guest is arriving. The great Amisha Patel is arriving, and before we bring her on, I just quickly asked James Muhammad, did you get a chance to read that Kyle Korver?
I did.
And just to wrap up, Kyle Korver, the basketball player, used to play for the Bulls, now he's played for the Georgia Jazz. He's a white man, and he wrote a piece called Privilege. I forget what publication it was for. I think it was the Players Journal.
Yeah, Players. Something.
Your thoughts on that piece?
Again, this whole issue of race, there has to be a serious conversation about race. To me, it was another attempt, hopefully a well-meaning attempt by a white sports star who has a following to raise this issue, to talk about race and to talk about privilege that many white folks don't always think about. I think lots of times, and I'm just generalizing, maybe whites think we're starting at the same line, the same place, but that's not true. There is a big difference of where somebody who is white starts than somebody who is black or even brown, than where they start. So that's the conversation that I think the country is afraid to have, a real one, because then you get into, well, if this issue, if something wrong was done, how do you correct the wrong? And I know you're running out of time, but
no, I think he's saying good.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm thinking, like, how do you correct a wrong? Well, if you're going to correct a wrong, you have to talk about what the problem was, and you have to talk about it in a way where it's real, whether you like it or not. You have to talk about, well, in the case of, let's just say the Native American. What happened to the Native American? What happened to their numbers? How do you, what happened? What role, Ben or whoever, you didn't have a role in that, but this title, privilege, is there something there that impacts you? Well, yes, it does. And this is how it impacts me. Or no, it doesn't. And this is how it impacts me. And if you say no, then we can have a conversation, and then maybe we can see eye to eye whether it does or does not. How the Native American would obviously have a different position on it. When it comes to African Americans, again, before we came on, I talked about generational wealth that has been lost, and the fact that the so-called African that came over, his descendants were not of the same mind as he was. The ones that came over who weren't killed or put into subjugation were fighters. They were warriors. They did not just sit back and just let somebody beat them. It took years to docile, to make a black person brought over docile, and certain things that happened that were strategic to make that happen. Just as you train, some of your pets, and make them make them respond to the bell when it's rung. They come to the door. So I'm just saying that there's a lot of repair that has to happen, and that repair can only happen if there's a sincere, honest conversation without the emotion and the name calling, to put on the table, well, African Americans, what happened to you? Native Americans, what happened to you? White folks, what happened to you? White immigrants. And then what role do you have now to help correct it, though you weren't not responsible for those actions? And if you're privileged, how do you bring equity to the...
Well, the contribution that Korver made to this, it could be reduced to one sentence, which Breitbart has redone in the right way. He said, white people may not be guilty current of the sins that their forefathers did, but they're responsible for them, and that has caused quite a consternation on the right. James Muhammad is in the studio. Monroe Anderson's in the studio. Amisha Patel is about to come on. We'll be right back after this.
Hey there, producer Dennis here. Thanks for finding and listening to the brand new Ben Joravsky Show. All right, so here's how this works. The Ben Joravsky Show live streams on the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel Tuesday through Friday, 1 until 3 p.m. Once the show is over, you can listen to the replay on our YouTube channel, or we throw it online for you to download by 4 p.m. Where can you download the Ben Joravsky Show, you may be asking yourself? Well, you may be asking yourself a fantastic question. You can find previous Ben Joravsky shows and guest interviews through several outlets. The Chicago Sun-Times Online, chicago.suntimes.com, the Chicago Reader Online, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, pick one. Just search for The Ben Joravsky Show. J-O-R-A, V as in victory, S-K-Y. So, let's recap. Tuesday through Friday, 1 until 3 p.m., live streamed on the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel and downloadable by 4 at chicago.suntimes.com, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcast. Yes, the Ben Joravsky Show is back. We're live and downloaded. Tell your friends and enjoy the rest of the show. If you would like to advertise with the Ben Joravsky Show, and who wouldn't, contact Tracy Boehm at publisher@chicagoreadercorp.com. We have several advertising options for your business or organization, and quite frankly, we would love nothing more than to tell our listeners all about it. Once again, that's Tracy Boehm at publisher@chicagoreadercorp, that's C-O-R-P as in Paul.com, to advertise with the Ben Joravsky Show, the Chicago Reader, and the Chicago Sun-Times. We look forward to plugging you. Okay, well, that came out kind of weird. More of the Ben Joravsky Show live and downloaded in moments. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Benny J, take it away.
All right, will do. Amisha Patel is in the studio. Amisha Patel is in the studio from Grassroots Collaborative, and she's also playing a double role. She's our ace correspondent who is covered, pretending she's an ace correspondent for the Ben Joravsky Show who's covered what went down today in the Chicago City Council while we were here talking to James Muhammad and Monroe Anderson about all the issues of the day. So we're going to bring Amisha on for a report. What you got for me, D, before we do that?
Absolutely. Here, it's the question that we're asking everybody on our Facebook and Twitter pages. The Bernie question. We have the Biden question. We now have the Bernie question. Right now on the Facebook page, we are asking you, since we've learned Bernie Sanders is a millionaire, is this a big deal or not a big deal for the Bernie Sanders campaign and their message? Like I said, here we're going to be reading your comments, so let's read some of those. Debbie weighs in, says, yes, it is a big deal because Senator Sanders based his 2016 campaign on standing up to the millionaires and billionaires. Frank Coconati has weighed in. Ladies and gentlemen, Frank Coconati has weighed in on the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page.
Oh, Franklin.
Frank Coconati says, Bernie is a circus act. Bernie does not run to win. Bernie runs to make millions.
Wait a minute. Frank Coconati called somebody else a circus act?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, come on, Frank.
All right, so there you go. Frank Coconati weighed in. Thank you very much, Frank. Jim weighed in. He says this is a distracting argument that people and lobbyists and corporations will try to use to discredit Bernie's policies. So does that mean that someone who product/book made money can't be in favor of working against wealth's anti-democratic, destructive, hold on, he's got more here, destructive influence? It's not mutually exclusive.
Pretty well done.
Okay.
Take that, Frank Coconati.
Oh, there you go, Frank. Huh? Our buddy Tim says if Bernie is a millionaire and at the same time he wants to raise taxes on millionaires and billionaires, he would be raising taxes on himself. I think that it shows he's going to walk the walk. By the way, his wife inherited a bunch of money a few years ago. I don't know if him and his wife filed jointly. And shout out to our buddy Pat Rod on the YouTube video live stream. He put in here, no big deal to me. Being a millionaire was never the problem. Millionaires buying politicians and hoarding money is the problem. Bernie question. We're asking all of you. Head over to the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show. And if you've yet to like the page, come on, like the page. When we hit 1,200 likes, we will have our next caption contest. And at Benny J Show on Twitter.
All right, very good. Thank you very much, Dr. D. All right, Amisha Patel.
Not a doctor.
Before we take that deep dive on Lincoln Yards and the 78, does it bother you that Bernie Sanders apparently is a millionaire thanks to his selling of books?
I think we need rich people to talk about how they need to give their wealth away. And if Bernie Sanders is a rich person who has been talking about how to give his wealth away, that's wonderful. We need owning class people to be on the right side. So I'm glad he's talking about it and he's open about it, because I think it'd be worse to pretend if he wasn't. But absolutely, we need folks at every income level to fight for the same message. And if Bernie is on that as a millionaire, great.
All right. I kind of agree with Amisha Patel on that one. Yeah, it didn't bother me that J.B. Pritzker was a billionaire. I was a little irritated that he was ducking his property taxes with that toilet scheme of his, which everybody has apparently forgotten. But he is leading the fight for a fair tax in Illinois, so good for him.
But I do think the point, I can't remember the number, but I don't know, it's like, I thought it was like 70 or 80% of Congress people are millionaires. Like, that actually is an issue. The fact that you can only get that position with extreme personal wealth, that is an issue. Bernie Sanders as an individual being a millionaire, I don't care. But the fact that it is so inaccessible and it's so out of reach for women of color, low-income people, folks to come from the communities to get into that office, that is absolutely a problem.
You know, and I have to ask you this. I know we're far afield. This always happens when Amisha Patel comes in. But when you just said that, I'm thinking, I'm going to see this movie on Thursday about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and how she won. I think it's called Take Down the House or something. It's a documentary about her campaign. And do you think it's what the vilification of her that we're seeing throughout the media and on social media, etc.? Do you think that's, I don't even know if fair is the right word, but it just it gets at what you're talking about, like the disadvantages that somebody has who doesn't have millions of dollars. She had to fight so hard to get there, and now she's there, and they're already just driving over her, pounding her into the ground. It seems kind of excessive to me. Am I wrong in that?
Absolutely. I mean, they're that scared of her, right? I mean, they are coming for her hard because of the power of her message. Her ability to communicate it and reach so many people is dangerous, and so they are coming hard. But it's you can't separate out sexism, racism, the fact that she's a woman of color, taking on this, the issues that she is. And it's her, and it's the whole crop of women of color who are in office that I think the right is, got their eyes on. But that is because of the power that they actually have.
Well, I urge everybody to go check out that movie. It's the Davis Theater this Thursday night. All right, Amisha Patel, let's get down to business on the local level. You've been following very closely as through the Grassroots Collaborative the two TIF deals that Mayor Rahm has pushed through the City Council in the last weeks of his term as Mayor of City Chicago, Lincoln Yards and 78. What went down today?
Well, I'll start with late last night, which is when when Mayor-elect Lori Lightfoot put out her statement, basically saying that she was giving a green light to both of these deals moving forward. And her justification was that she increased the minority business set-aside and the women set-asides by 4%. The minimum requirements was what the developers had committed to, which was 26%. They moved it up to 30%, a 4% increase, $80 million more that now will have to go to businesses owned by people of color and women. So we knew when on Monday we got the delay, which was a momentary huge victory to actually get nothing gets delayed in the city, and certainly so that was a big deal. And it was we were actually we were holding a press conference when we got the news, and it was a pretty electric moment. But when we learned very quickly that it was a 48-hour delay, there's not a whole lot you can there's not a whole lot you can win in 48 hours. It was a setup, right? And so she had to come out with something. She did come out with something, but it wasn't enough. It certainly wasn't enough to say, great, let's go ahead with these deals that are going to fundamentally change the direction of the city of Chicago. So what happened this morning was, the finance committee reconvened because the Monday meeting when they were supposed to vote on both projects, they ended up doing a delay, but only for 2 days. They quickly voted this morning on both TIF deals. It's a set of 11 ordinances actually, but on 2 TIF deals. And as they were doing that, there were several hundred of us who were protesting on the second floor of City Hall, calling out these deals to say it wasn't enough. They shouldn't move forward. Lightfoot herself has said consistently that the new mayor and the new city council is the right body to make the decision about what happens with these projects. And that, of course, didn't happen. And it didn't happen because the vote would have been much more in question had we waited till after inauguration. We had 6 aldermen-elect do civil disobedience with us immediately after the vote. They and several others had already publicly committed to say that they would not, they were not in support of these votes. And then, a crew of incumbents as well. So, but we, I think what was really important for us is that we know the fight continues, and we were clear on this from the beginning that stopping these 2 deals was going to be very difficult. But what was really powerful about this morning is that we really did, take back the power and really focus on the power of the people. And we did our own People's City Council vote outside of City Hall. We had aldermen-elect, right, who were there to speak out and against these deals and to stand in support with us. And in fact, they sat down in the middle of the South Street in support with us. It was along with community leaders and organizers who've been fighting this for months. And, the collaborative has been taking on TIFs for over a decade. Our fight will continue beyond today. But of course, it's disappointing that the vote happened, but not surprising.
When you say, setup, you earlier said that there was a setup in your humble opinion. Explain what you mean by that.
Well, you can't, when the fact that, Lightfoot had committed very clearly her opposition to these deals. And, Sunday night, late Sunday night, she issued a statement saying that she thought she was pushing for the vote in Finance Committee the next morning to not happen, that instead it should be a subject matter hearing, meaning hear again the voices of the people. And so Monday morning was when we learned, again, minutes before the Finance Committee was supposed to gather, that the vote was indeed not going to happen. But when the delay was only 48 hours, you can't get anything real. I would say real, right? I mean, more contracts to people of color and women is important. Of course, the integrity of those businesses actually being run by people of color and women is a whole other thing. We have a really bad history in the city of fronting people, but it's actually white folks who are making all the profits still. And I think the important thing too for us is like, even with that additional $80 million going to people of color and women, the impact on women and people of color in the city for decades and decades to come is much more disastrous, with billions of dollars, again, going to create these two new neighborhoods in the city of Chicago. So when I say it's a setup, there's no way anything real, anything like substantive and significant could actually have been won in the span of 2 days. What really needed to have happened was to win a delay till post inauguration, and we had the new administration in office, and even then would need time to really dig into this. And when we talk about the related Midwest TIF, aldermanic prerogative is real convenient, right? Because it's mayoral prerogative, because the mayor wanted that TIF to move forward. You can very arguably say that there is no sitting alderman right now, with Danny Solis totally missing in action. And so the incoming alderman, Byron Siccho Lopez, has been adamant that this deal shouldn't go forward the way it currently is. But of course, that was ignored.
Was he
right?
one of the aldermen who participated?
Yes. Yes.
All right, folks, let's just pause. This is one of my favorite little themes. Amisha was talking about this with Maya yesterday. The utter fraudulent issue that was raised in his campaign of aldermanic prerogatives being a serious problem in the city of Chicago. So let's just pause, folks. I really want everybody out there to absorb what I'm about to say. Supposedly, the aldermen are the kings or the queens of all zoning matters in their wards. And the reason we give them such authority, James Muhammad and Amisha Patel, is because they know better than anyone else the ramifications of any deal on their constituents. And that's what home rule is all about. That's the fundamental bedrock of democracy. Small d democracy, James Muhammad, democracy. And that's what we're all about, the city of Chicago. And that's what advocates of alderman prerogative to tell you, okay? And aldermen will supposedly fall on the sword for alderman prerogative. I'm just giving you I'm doing a good job, I think, Amisha Patel, of summing up what they say, all right? So we have a ward, the 25th ward, in which the 78, which is this huge, humongous TIF deal, has no alderman, has no effective alderman, because the alderman, the current incumbent, Daniel Solis, was caught wearing a wiretap, a federal wiretap. I don't make this stuff up, folks. A federal wiretap, and he's gone somewhere. I don't know. Maybe he's in witness protection, Amisha. So there's no alderman. The incoming alderman, who was just elected by the good people, the good voters of the 25th ward, says he's against the program. So if we really had aldermanic prerogative in the city of Chicago, the good alderman of the city of Chicago would have said, we cannot vote in the 78 today because the current alderman, the one who was elected by the people of the 25th ward, says he's against it. But did they do that, Amisha Patel?
They did not.
And what did they do? Did they vote for it?
Both votes sailed through.
And did anybody rise on the council floor and say, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, this is a gross violation of the fundamental precept of aldermanic prerogative? Did anybody do that?
I'm not sure. I was on the streets blocking traffic, so not
James
not
Muhammad,
sure.
were you aware of
They
that?
didn't stand on the desk, I'm sure.
Yeah, they didn't do a Richard Mell. Richard Mell standing on the desk. Right? Isn't that funny? They pick and choose when they're going to enact it. There's so much hypocrisy in this city, Amisha Patel. But anyway, all right. What about the larger issue that goes like to all the citywide issue, how we raise our money? Do you think that the public in this city will ever become aware of the consequences that these huge TIF deals and these TIF projects have on their pocketbook?
I think more and more people know it, or at least know to ask questions. There's more outrage. I think that is certainly happening through, again, years and years of organizing, through the writing you've done, through the, through really lifting up the kind of the string of egregious TIF deals that the city of Chicago has entered into. The mechanics of what that means into people's pocketbooks is, I think people don't necessarily understand that in terms of the fact that actually it's not just, oh, well, this money is going over now to this development. It means that actually property taxes are going to go up, and it's not just that you're held harmless. So I think there's still more work to do to have people understand that. But the overall question and problem of TIFs, I think there's a lot of, people in the city of Chicago, understand that it's not working, and it's certainly not working for them. And I think that's the big thing. The way TIFs work in the city is that instead of reducing income inequality, which is the whole purpose of it, it is completely making income inequality worse. Because the neighborhoods that have lots of TIF money are the neighborhoods that already have resources. So they've got a whole bunch of extra money to do sidewalk repair and streetlight repair and infrastructure and all that stuff dipping into TIF funds, like the near south, the near west sides. And the neighborhoods that actually are blighted, that need development, the TIF funds are literally like dollars, like single dollars, hundreds of dollars. That's it in these funds. So the whole system is not working and hasn't worked. There's certainly, well, it's working for some people. It's not working for the people it should work for and that it's intended to work for. And that for us is like the key thing is like, all right, so what comes next, and how do we keep taking on this fight over the next 4 years with this new administration to really say we need a completely different way forward, and we need to talk about economic development that actually centers Black and brown people, that centers the south and west sides of the city, and that, you know, instead of the continued failed status quo approach that we've seen not only for the 8 years under Emmanuel, but certainly all the, you know, many years under Daley as well.
You know, and one of the particularly frustrating things, the way that votes go down in the city council, Amisha Patel, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is that the aldermen from the wards that are getting the raw deal here are more often than not the aldermen who will support the TIF deal. I've been watching this happen for years and years and years. Your thoughts about this pattern?
Well, it comes back to this piece of aldermanic prerogative and the fact that you know, it's really this weird deal that folks enter into, which is that, you know, and I think what we heard definitely with these votes, Ron was pushing hard all weekend to lock in his votes. It was not a given, right? And he was pushing hard to get his votes, and part of what he was doing to lock in his votes was making all kinds of promises to aldermen about the things that they wanted to see in their wards that he was promising to make sure happened if this TIF deal went through.
Mm-hmm. Did they? So in other words, it may not be a lot, it may not be 1.3 billion, but it's something, and something is better than nothing, and so let's take it.
And that's, I think, the whole challenge, and what's wrong is that, you know, it's like, actually, if people organized, there's so much more, and banded together to demand actually what neighborhoods and communities needed, there'd be so much more power. But it does feel like it's this individual, like, all right, let's make a deal, that may feel like the best thing that an alderman can get, but it certainly is leaving so much power on the table.
That is Amisha Patel from Grassroots Collaborative. We're talking about the TIF deals that went down. I'll have some more questions about the future of the city of Chicago under Mayor-elect Lori Lightfoot when we return.
The Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you by the Chicago Sun-Times. For the latest in Chicago and Illinois news, sports, weather, and the latest in national news from a real Chicago frame of mind and real Chicago writers, check out the Chicago Sun-Times. Read the daily paper or online at chicago.suntimes.com. And hey, if you have a little extra cash, subscribe. And by the Chicago Reader. For a deeper dive in the daily Chicago news and for all of what's going on in this city, you gotta read the Reader. Music, arts and culture, film, extensive event calendars, concert listings, and more, including weekly political columns from writers like Maya Dukmasova and, yes, our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader is free in newsstands and at chicagoreader.com. That's chicagoreader.com. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Mr. Joravsky, take us home.
All right, I love that music. You know, I love that. I'm all fired up over this TIF stuff and talking about it all day. I hear that music, just kind of mellows me out. By the way, Amisha Patel, Grassroots Collaborative, playing keyboard on that song. Do you know that? Yeah, she's good. She's really good, yeah. When she's not out there in the streets protesting the city's TIF policy, she's playing that keyboard. All right, Amisha, I know you were disappointed by that, how this all went down, how it ended, I should say. You know, you were probably very excited on Monday when that first word broke. I was so happy, I was jumping for joy. Then I quickly realized, oh yeah, this is not working out the way I thought. I kind of knew right there and then when they announced that they were going to spend 48 hours investigating it, that they were going to look for some way to cut this deal, give everybody face saving and all that. All right, so going forward, your thoughts on what it's going to be like with Mayor Lori Lightfoot, at least in comparison to what it was like with Mayor Rahm Emanuel.
I think it's still early to know exactly, obviously, how things are going to go. But But I will say, one of the things when we did a town hall with mayoral candidates in January called Reimagine Chicago. It was on the west side of Chicago. We had nearly 1,000 people in the room. I think over the limits of that church, but it was incredible. And Lori Lightfoot was there and answered a whole bunch of questions and made a bunch of commitments, including committing to free city colleges, committing to free CTA for young people and seniors, committing to eliminate the gang database, reopen mental health clinics. As a candidate, you make all kinds of promises and commitments, but these are very clear yes or no. Many of these were yes or no questions, and she said yes to everything we asked. We also had, at the end, had them sign a giant card saying, I will keep my promise to the things that I said today, to meeting with the Reimagine Chicago Coalition before inauguration, and also to having Reimagine Chicago on my transition teams. So she definitely doesn't have us officially on her transition teams. We're a broad coalition. 35 organizations put that together. So I'm sure she could say, there's many of our organizations who are on there in various committees, but not they did not respond to us as Reimagine Chicago to be part of the committee. But just yesterday, finally, they did email back to say that they wanted to schedule a time to sit down and meet. So on that front, Rahm Emanuel never agreed to ever have any conversation with folks in neighborhoods and communities that wasn't a completely scripted and performative conversation. So in that sense, that is different. It is very different than the last administration or the current administration. But in terms of how the governance and how policies are going to move, I think that we don't know yet. But it is very clear we have the need for organizing will be stronger than ever. And I think we will have more opportunities to win some of the things that we want to see. Certainly more opportunities than we had under Rahm Emanuel. But there are many concerns. I mean, she as a candidate talked about this idea of taking some of the closed school buildings and turning them into mini police academies. And she backtracked off of it. And then suddenly a week ago, there's paperwork filed by the city of Chicago to take a school in South Shore and turn it into a mini police academy. That raises all kinds of questions. Was that a real big coincidence that she threw out this thing? Or clearly there are conversations with the Emanuel administration making plans for a seamless transition that includes very bad policies that the Emanuel administration is committed to. So I do think that is off the table because of the level of organizing and outrage that happened after that announcement. But it is a clear sign of our need to be vigilant and to continue to organize and to hold her and push her, because left on her own, I think we have a lot of bad decisions moving forward. And I think there are going to be big battles over the next 4 years. And I think hopefully that she will also be listening and responding to community members to actually make some good decisions. Mm-hmm. And I also think the other big piece for sure is the new city council. There's so much more possible with the city council than has been true for decades. Even, after in 2007 elections, which were a referendum on the big box living wage ordinance, which was what our organization worked on. This was when Walmart was trying to come in originally into Chicago and have 20 stores. Are the one and only veto in Mayor Daley's entire 20 plus years in office was on our ordinance, which would have mandated a living wage for big box retailers. Though we didn't win, he vetoed that and we couldn't override the veto. We did win the minimum wage increase in the state that just finally went, that had then held for many years until recently. But the aldermen, I'm going to get the numbers wrong, so I won't say them. But I don't know, 5 to 10 aldermen lost their seats. Incumbent aldermen who were against the living wage, replaced by pro-living wage people, including folks like Scott Wagasback and I'll even say back then, Bob Fioretti and other folks who came into office very clearly on a pro-living wage platform. But even from that moment, like there's nothing still quite like this moment in terms of this crop of candidates, of aldermen-elect who really come from movements. Who come from organizing, like Mike Rodriguez, who comes from organizing in Little Village and running one of our, Enlace Chicago, which is a member of ours. Maria Haddon, who has done organizing with BYP and has done, a ton of organizing at the local level for years. Byron Sixto Lopez, who was the head of Pilsen Alliance, right? I mean, I think what's possible in the next 4 years is really different because of the set of aldermen coming in who are rooted in our communities and in our movements. And, 6 of them, again, stood with us this morning. And that's unheard of. Like the fact that you had 6 aldermen-elect come and to do a civil disobedience in front of City Hall, it gives me so much hope of the kinds of things that will be possible to push forward in the next 4 years.
Yeah, and when you said they reached out, they wanted to meet with you, when you say they, who was the they you were alluding to?
The Lori Lightfoot administration. So that they're scheduled to set up a meeting with Lori and the Reimagine Chicago Coalition.
Well, that is, I don't want to be all gloom and doom today. That is something, considering the tone and tenor of Mayor Rahm's years and his attitude toward people of your persuasion, your progressive populist persuasion. He wanted nothing to do with people like you. So, I'm being hopeful.
No, I think it is, and I had to follow up like 4 times on the letter, but, it's going to take.
There goes that hope.
It's going to take vigilance.
Well,
it's not going to just come to us, right? But it is, hope is a discipline, and we have to stay at it. And I think the fact that she is going to fulfill that commitment to meet with us does mean something, because again, I think the closest I've gotten to Rahm Emanuel was yelling at him at a budget hearing.
As he was running out the door.
Yes, right.
Well, I have to tell you this. I was reminiscing and I did write this for a column. It hasn't come out yet, but I was reminiscing when I got word. I think you may have been the one who passed the word on to me. I can't remember that Lori had called for a delay, and then Mayor Rahm was seconding her call for delay, and it looked as though they were going to postpone this vote until after the swearing in of the new council and the new mayor. And I started reminiscing about the TIF crusade of 2006 over LaSalle Central TIF, a downtown Central TIF district. And you could have fit everybody who was involved in that crusade, Amisha Patel, at that table where you're sitting. I think it was me and a couple other misfits. And Mike Quigley, who is the Cook County Board Commissioner, showed up at a Community Development Commission meeting to protest that. And this is the state of Chicago then. It may give you a little hope. The chairwoman of the commission was trying to deny Mike Quigley the opportunity to speak because she argued that he was a Cook County Board Commissioner. It was just a blatant show of power, a way of just steamrolling anybody that would dare to oppose. It was one official, okay? And she wasn't even going to let him speak, and he threatened to have a press conference unless she did let him speak, so she finally relented. She was just probably messing with him. So when I see so many, fast forward all these years later, and you've got dozens of people protesting, you have 6 newly elected aldermen protesting, 13 people voted against it, or 14 voted for against one TIF, 13 voted for the other. You forced the mayor-elect to at least act as though she was reviewing it. You're forcing people to reconsider sort of the myths and the lies they put up about this program. I don't know. It's very hard for a jaded old guy like me to be hopeful, Amisha, but I feel a little hope. What do you think? I
do think it's a new moment, and it's unknown of what we'll make of this moment, but it is a new moment. It is a shift. I think it's important to notice that because much less will be possible if we kind of, act as if nothing has changed, because I think there are opportunities that we have to actually be alert for and to be ready for, and that is really critical. And I do think I think it's going to be an interesting next 4 years.
It will be indeed. And it is no joke. $80 million that you pointed out that will be shifted to minority contractors. That's no small fun. So I'm trying my best, Amisha Patel, to look on the bright side today. Is that a good idea to do?
I think organizing gives me hope. I think that our movements are making this possible, and I think more is possible than we actually think and can tell.
All right, very good. That's a good place to end it. Amisha Patel from Grassroots Collaborative, always a friend of the show. Always great to have her on as well. D, you got an update for me, young man?
Actually, yeah, real quick, because I said I'd do it on Facebook, and I'm not a liar, okay? We're asking everybody the Bernie question on both our Facebook and Twitter pages at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show. The Bernie question, Bernie's a millionaire. Is this a big deal or not a big deal for the Bernie Sanders campaign and Bernie Sanders' message in the 2020 presidential race? Steve says, don't blame Bernie for what he didn't say. His speeches reference the billionaire class, not millionaires and billionaires. And don't forget Dr. Evil from Austin Powers. Though $1 million is more than most folks have, it's not what it used to be either.
Okay, quoting Austin Powers.
Head over to the Facebook page, Twitter page. Answer the Bernie question. Tomorrow's program will be reading your answers.
Yeah, no, I'm with Amisha on this one. I don't think it's that damaging. Listen, I know Donald Trump is going to work overtime to try to make it seem that Bernie Sanders is a hypocrite. There he goes. That's our Donald Trump, yeah. But I don't think it will fly with Democratic voters. It may just give Republicans another reason to vote against Bernie Sanders, but they weren't going to vote for him anyway, Amisha Patel. Anyway, good job, Dr. D. Appreciate that. Amisha Patel, great job as always. Monroe Anderson, James Muhammad were our guests earlier today. Miles Davis Porter, he's got a new nickname thanks to James Muhammad. Fantastic job as always. He's the star third baseman for the Roosevelt University baseball team.
And he can grab one hell of a guest. He's good.
Yeah, he can grab a guest.
Well, not grab him, but, bring him into the studio.
Can smack that ball. Miles Davis Porter, and, of course, the man, the myth, the legend, behind the board, wheeling and dealing, the pride and joy of Alton, Illinois. Ladies all love him for his body and his mind. Okay. Give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. See you tomorrow, everybody.
And hey, live streamers, if you missed any of today's show, don't worry about it, Ben. That's okay. You can say what you want. If you missed any of today's show, you can download it by 4 o'clock. ChicagoReader.com. Chicago.suntimes.com. Okay? Download it. Hey, downloaders, we live stream the show. That's right. The YouTube live stream. ChicagoReader.com. Chicago.suntimes.com. We start at 1 p.m. Central Time every day. Listen live. Hang out and join the YouTube live stream chat like Johnny and Benjamin and Pat Rod, all those guys. We'll see everybody tomorrow.
This weekend, come explore the Admiral Theater's dark side. It's Strip Wars Volume 1, The Phantom Stripper, a parody show live at the Admiral Theater, 3940 West Lawrence and Pulaski, April 11th, 12th, and 13th in a theater not so far away. Do not miss Strip Wars, The Phantom Stripper, a parody show live at the Admiral Theater. For more information, call 773-478-8111 or visit admiralx.com. This is a totally nude show. Must be 18 years or older to enter.